you're putting together your lighting list, one of the most important things that you're doing is figuring out whether what you're choosing is the right tool for the job. And a big part of that is it bright enough? What's the exposure going to be in any given situation? There are a lot of ways to do this. There are a lot of tools out there. The math is not super difficult, and there's your own experience to draw on. But one thing that Scenario does is it actually does it where you're already working. So all you need to do is decide what your settings are and then target something. So let's take a look at how that works. We'll start with details, and this is with nothing selected, so it's just the details of the diagram itself. You can do this in Lux or in foot candles, but we're going to do it in f-stops. So set up your ISO, your camera settings, what your exposure time is, and then does the space have any ambient light that you want to work with, and then what is your target exposure, your midtone. You can also adjust it up or down. This is if you want to push or pull, some kind of aesthetic adjustment, compensate for filters, that type of thing. But it works the same way that it does on a light meter. So let's take a look at how this works. This is all you need to do. Target. And now you have a readout. That's it. Wherever you move it, that readout is going to adjust to how far away it is, and it's also going to adjust to how you have it spotted or flooded. Now these are from the built-in library. This is a generic 5K, a generic 1K. These are kind of average values across different manufacturers. You can pull actual values if you use cloud library fixtures. So here's an aperture fixture here, and you can see that it has the actual value of what this is going to be. Now, one thing that we're doing is we've added a height element. It's still a two-dimensional diagram, but you can see that we have now these fixture and actor heights. And this is going to calculate distance in 3 dimensions so that the actual exposure can be calculated in 3 dimensions. So now let's target with another one here. Now we have a couple things. That one's not quite as bright because it's a 1K. Let's give this person a little room to breathe. And now you can see that they're getting into a little more reasonable ranges. Now this is only a stop and a half over. And this one is still 3 stops over. So this is a little bit bright. And if you need to just like show what your desired exposure is going to be, you can always dim this down. So this will give you just a linear curve of what the intensity, what the output from the actual fixture is going to be. And you can see as we get lower and lower, the color here gets cooler. It's kind of a false color thing. But let's bring this up and see what we can do with some diffusion instead. That's a little more of a real world case. First of all, we can put lights, or we can put gels directly on the fixture. So let's say we added some half CTO. We see that backs it off a little bit, and you see that we're up here, that we're losing half a stop from that CTO. But let's throw some frames in the mix as well. This is where it gets really fun. So, and now we're gonna double up on the warmth here. So let's go ahead and get rid of the CTO and instead throw in this 4x4 frame, and you can see that all I need to do is put it in the path of the light. Now we have that. Now you see that we're still losing a little bit here, but if we want to get rid of that, just get rid of it. Now it doesn't affect it. So you can see when we add it or remove it, that basically just says, okay, this is not actually in the path of this fixture. It may look like it, but maybe it's above or below it, that type of thing. We'll keep it in there. And now we'll add diffusion. So this is a full white, and again, just drag it into the path. And you can see a couple things have happened. One is that the edge of this got softer. You can see here we have a tiny little gradient here. This is a pretty hard source. But if we add a frame, we're actually going to make that more soft. And you can see even as we get closer, it wraps around even more. This is just to give you a sense of what your wrap is going to be like, how soft those edges are going to be. Just so you have it in your head. It's going to show you what each of the stop losses are, and as you can see, we are actually treating this as another source. and then mixing it with the original. So it's going to give you a pretty decent representation of what this particular diffusion is going to give you. Different diffusions will have different values. Now you can still do things here with the beam, so you can see that if we get the beam narrow enough, it's going to show us an approximate spread for how it's going through that diffusion. A lot of permutations of how this can work. But overall, it's just going to take those into account and give you a pretty solid exposure estimate. Now, we talked about having that ambient before, because if you select the target, it's not just going to show you the one fixture, it's going to show you all the fixtures that are targeting it. So you see now we have that there, we have what our ambient is giving us over here, and we have what our backlight is giving us here. And all of these are in 3 dimensions. So that is a pretty good start. Now, let's give ourselves a little fill here, and let's do it with a bounce frame, because bouncing is getting much more complex with how we need to calculate things. So I want to do, let's see, we have an unbleached muslin here. Let's open up this side. Let's say we're going to do it this way, because let's say the camera's here, just for argument's sake. So we got our camera, we got our angle here, and now we want, let's use another 5K here. We'll go ahead and just copy this over, but we don't want it to target the person. We want it to target the frame. So now, this fixture is actually targeting the frame, and when we select this frame, we see that we have the ability to target with the frame. Now, frames are a little bit different. We still are able to rotate them freely because we got to fit them in the space, and you'll see that we have an angle of incidence, angle of reflection thing happening here. So it's going to show you what the kind of ideal bounce angle is for this particular frame. Let's optimize that. Let's get it to there. We see that we're losing 0.4 stops. This is unbleached muslin. This is, you can select different things, different materials, and it's going to give you different bounce values. It's going to take away a little less, that type of thing. Let's go back to our unbleached. And now, if we want to get a reading here, we just got to target it. So we'll target the actor. Okay, that's right on. That's pretty good. If you want to get rid of the target, just do that right there. And the cool thing is it is cumulative. So now if we want to add, I want actually a little more out of this. Or let's say we only have a 2K or something like that. But I'll just add another one that's still targeting it. And now we see we're getting more out of it. We got almost a full other stop, which makes sense. We doubled it. But the other thing that this is doing is it is compensating for that angle. You see it's getting kind of complex around here. But if we're going off axis, it's not going to give us as good of a reading there. So it's taking that into account as well. So now we have more going on. All right. So that's how bounce frames work. Now there are other things to consider when it comes to fixtures, mostly that some of them don't really throw out light in a linear way. We think of them as more omnidirectional. Space lights are a good example. So let's copy our actor here. We have our original one there, and let's take them over to another space that we've created that has some space lights. And look at that, it's starting to pick them up already. So we have some space lights, and these space lights are what we're calling omnidirectional lights. You see this very small circle of exposure. The reason that that's so small is that this is at a height of 16 feet. And this circle tells us where midtone is going to be for any given fixture. You may have noticed with the other fixtures we're using, the beams. These beams actually now go out as far as midtone for whatever you have this set to. So you see them getting longer when we have that, and a little shorter when we get to midtone there. So that's something to keep in mind. But the beams here represent midtone, and you see as we go lower down, that midtone gets bigger. Let's take it back up to our height. But with omnidirectional fixtures, they are just going to figure out whatever is in range, and that range is 3 stops under. So if something is more than 3 stops under, so dimmer, it's going to lose. It's not going to be affected, you see. But if it gets within that range, it starts to be affected, and it gets affected more and more as you get within that range. And then as you move through that range, you start to get a sense of how everything affects it. So, use space lights with care is the moral here. And this applies to other omnidirectional lights, such as a big balloon. We have a big balloon over here, so you can see how it's affecting. Getting a little spicy there, but that's because the height's at 0 feet. Let's put this up more like where a balloon would be. You see our circle got smaller, and now we just don't want to get too close. So the last thing that you saw a second ago was the sun. Let's move ourselves back away from here and over to this space. The sun is unique in that the normal rules of falloff don't really apply. It's so far away, it's so bright, that really all you need to know is which direction is coming from. So the sun works like a fixture. You target, but that's all you do. It's not giving you a beam, it's not giving you anything like that. And what we have here is we have some presets. You can choose among any of these. These are just fixed values, and it's going to tell you what the exposure is going to be. But if you happen to be in a space and you know exactly what the exposure is for the sun at a certain time of day, just set it to custom and say, no, this is going to give me, exactly this, and that's what it'll be. No matter where you move it, it's going to be hard source, and it's going to be whatever exposure you have set it to be. But it also plays by the rules of bounces, and just want to duplicate this. Here, let's do this. Paste here. Yeah. So let's say instead of the targeting directly, or actually here's a good example. So instead of the targeting directly, we'll do this. We'll have one target the frame, one target the person. We want them to be at we want them to be at the same angle, basically, because that is how the sun works. And so now we know. Okay, so we have that direct sun that's there, but if we use some unbleached muslin as bounce, we can at least get that there. So that is how all the various components work for exposure. There's obviously a lot to play around with here, a lot of permutations, but hopefully it'll give you a better idea of exactly what you're walking into on the day. And ultimately, if it's kind of getting in your way and you just don't want all this stuff on here, go to layers, go to types, and turn off light estimates. And then everything just works without the exposure component. Enjoy.